A very good evening to one and all present, and welcome to a brand new episode of VUTV by Vijaybhoomi. This is a series that is very close to our heart and a very unique series called Express with Ease, where we are joined by students on a weekly basis and we talk about trending and contemporary topics or topics that are grabbing the eyeballs, have been making headlines, etc. Today, we are actually here to talk about a very sensitive topic that has been plaguing our country and also all over the world for a very long time. I'm sure all of us have been reading about the rise in the number of cases of violence against women that have been taking place in different parts of the country. And I'm sure for all of us, definitely when we were reading these pieces of news about, these shocking incidents with the gory and gruesome details, it definitely ran a chill down our spine. So today I want to know from the youth, what do they feel? Does the youth today, young women especially, do they actually feel safe in India? How is it that we should address the safety of women issue in India? What is the kind of support system that we can provide to women to make it a safer place from the various institutions? What is the kind of sensitization that we must have at homes and educational spaces, educational institutions to end gender discrimination, to end the power dynamics between both the genders, so that truly all of us can live equally in this country and we can live in a safe environment. To have this discussion today, I have the lovely students joining me of the City Montessori School, Gomti Nagar, Lucknow. Firstly, I would like to extend a huge thank you, and we are in so much gratitude to the school for facilitating this session and for making sure that we are connected to the students and making sure that they are part of this panel discussion that we have today on this very, very important topic. So joining me from the City Montessori School, Gomti Nagar, we have Mohammad Akif, we have Ms. Shatakshi Avasti, and we have Mr. Hitova Asumi, all students of this particular school. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us today. And I'm sure, like everybody joining me, we are waiting and very intrigued to hear your perspective, hear what the youth thinks about this very important issue that needs to be tackled on an immediate basis. To all my audience joining me, thank you very much, guys, for joining us this Saturday evening. I am sure this is a topic that evokes a lot of information, a lot of sentiment, it evokes a lot of emotions in the people. I'm sure everybody does have an opinion on this topic. So please make sure that you're sending us all your questions, you're sending us your comments on our various social media platforms as well as in this platform. And I'm going to integrate that into my conversation with my lovely student panel that I have lined up today. So without further ado, let's get right straight into this conversation. So today we're talking about addressing safety of women in India. What are your initial thoughts on this topic? What have you been feeling after all these disturbing cases that we have been reading about in the recent few weeks? Shatakshi, if we could start with you.
Yeah, so being a woman myself, I obviously feel very disheartened when we read or hear about the rising criminal cases against women. So I genuinely feel that we need to we in the first place we talk about educating and empowering women, but I think we should also start educating our men, like the men in the society, because they're an integral part of the society, they're a major influence. So we need to start educating them so that there is a mutual respect between the males and the females in the society, them being the primary genders. So, because if there is no mutual respect between the two, then obviously there will be no room for change and improvement.
Point very well taken, Shatakshi, and a good point made, which is that we need to focus and divert our energies towards sensitization on gender discrimination issues, especially with the men, so that we can end the violence that has been happening against women. Hitova, let's now move the conversation to you. Do you agree with Shatakshi? What would you like to add? What was your thought process when you've been reading about these increasing cases of violence against women in India today?
I agree with what Shatakshi said. And it's really disheartening because whenever you read the newspaper in the morning or put on the TV and then watch the news, listen to what the people say, like it's not a day goes by when you don't hear that someone has been molested or a woman has been raped or killed. And it's really disheartening to see that because when we look around India, like people call India a developing country, one that is going forward really quickly. And then to see the increasing number of cases of violence against women, that makes us have second thoughts on how the society is actually developing. Because an example is like I think from the year 2018 to 2019, and so forth. Like since then, we've been seeing an increase in a number of cases, not decrease, but an increase every year. And it's really sad to see that the society is not exactly developing the way we want it to, the ideal way it should be. And I think this revolves mainly around two things, not only the law, but also the society. Like, I agree with what Shatakshi said about how men should have a respect for women. And I think that should start from the family itself. The fathers should set an example for their children by respecting their wives, their mothers, etc.
Absolutely. So I think some good points that we have fleshed out there. Well, firstly, the fact that along with probably making our law enforcement stronger, what we're also looking at a change in the mindset of society. And second, more importantly, that we're calling ourselves a developing nation, and obviously we are on a path where we are very fastly, wanting to move towards becoming a superpower in the world. So while we are doing that, this kind of a situation acts as a total digression from the kind of image that we are wanting to portray to the world, because clearly this is the antithesis of being a progressive society. Akif, let me move this conversation to you. All of you, like, when you discuss it with your peer group, when you discuss it with your friends, in school, probably your colony friends, etc., how safe do you actually feel that you feel that, young women actually feel in India today? When you discuss with them, what is their opinion? Do you really think that women actually feel safe? What is the voice of the youth? How is the youth feeling about the entire safety angle in this issue?
I mean, as a man, as a male in the society, I can't really seem to speak for the young women, but from what I know, that I do know for a fact that the environment in these times for them, which is against them, is really unsafe regarding all the crimes happening against them. It seems to like never stop at all. So I would definitely say that young women would probably feel really unsafe in India, which being wrong is the sad reality and the truth. And I have a lot of friends who seem to go through these issues, and I mean, they also see what's going on in the world in India mostly, and it's kind of really sad to see that.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's a point well made. Shatakshi, do you actually feel that these rise in incidents is instilling a fear in all of us, especially the women, like the women in society, the younger women? Like, what is the conversation like within the groups?
So, like, obviously, when we read stuff like uh, harassment against women, there obviously is little bit of fear inside everybody. But I think, like, coming to the primary question that you put up, I think it's a very like subjective question. As somebody who was raised and who grew up in a family where I wasn't treated any differently than my elder brothers. I think things for me, situations for me are very like different. A lot of people might think if I'm saying something, if I'm doing something, like my actions, I'm being a little bold. But I think the definition for being bold also changes from person to person. And this obviously comes from the environment at home. So that also, like, when I talk about family, I think friends play a very important role. And talking about myself, I have a lot of male friends than females, and I've never felt like I had to fit in a certain spectrum. I had to pick mark certain boxes because of my gender to be a part of that circle. So I think that in general, everybody around me, excuse me, including the men, have been very, very supportive. Like the women I know, my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, everybody, I think they are very independent, very strong women. And this is because my family, be it the paternal or the maternal side, have just instilled the confidence in them that you can do it. But if we talk about the others, situation can be very different, and they may get like really bad, really bad for them than we actually think. So I'm fortunate enough to have an environment like that where I can speak what I want, do what I want under restrictions, which are the better, like which are for my better. So yeah.
Right. So I think that's fantastic. So what you're trying to say is that, even if there are restrictions, there are restrictions that are reasonable and that are equal and irrespective of the gender that you belong to.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and while, obviously this increases your fear, but you're fortunate enough to have an environment where you're treated as an equal and you really don't see gender coming in between the access of opportunities, between, putting a point across, etc. So that's extremely good. And I think that's a very good starting point for us to start with. So, to all our viewers who are joining us, the best thing that we can probably do at our level is to ensure that within our small ecosystems, within the small environments that we have, let's try to create an equal environment, right? And if there's something that's unequal, let's try to create a dialogue around it. Let's try to ask the question why. And while I'm at this question, that, let's ask the question why, I can imagine, because, when we read about these incidents in the newspaper, we always, go back when we discuss with our peers, when we discuss with our parents, they become dinner table conversations. Eventually the question does come down to what lies at the root cause of the discrimination against women. Like, what are the causes, if one has to flesh out, that lead to this difference in power dynamics and leads to violence against women in India. So, Hitova, if you can, like, what is it that, when you have reflected, introspected, either, through with yourself or probably with your friends, what are the sort of conclusions that you guys have come to when you talk about the root causes?
Okay, so the root cause for discrimination against women, well, we can't actually narrow it down to one. There could be many, and we're not very certain also. But if you look at it, I'd say from the beginning of time, um, the story of Adam and Eve, if you've heard of that, um, like it tells us that Eve was the one who first ate the apple that was given to her by the devil, and later on fed it to Adam. And so, like, people sort of drew a conclusion from there. It sort of depicts women as the one as the one being in fault, of being tempted by the devil and actually getting someone else to disobey God and have that apple too. And I think there are millions of other stories that are similar to that, that fabricate women as the ones who caused the war. The Trojan War, for example, was caused after Helen was taken by Paris, and that was also caused by a woman, according to many historians. And numerous examples. For example, the Ramayana, Sita was taken by Ravan, and there are people who I've discussed with, and they have blamed Sita for helping Ravan in the first place. And when you actually analyze all these stories, you come to a conclusion that it's sort of done by society. They've been built around that concept that it's the women that bring about a lot of um, ill omens or sort of ill things around the society, and so they sort of tend to attack them. And also, women have been portrayed as um, emotionally weak because, like, in one conversation, someone pointed out the fact that women are emotionally weak, and that is why they are looked down upon. And there's so many other examples, so many other prejudices um, that have been so rooted deeply in society that we can't just pluck out one and say that this is the cause.
Right. So if I could probably summarize that correctly, it's you're pointing towards the historical narrative that is being passed on from centuries and years that promotes discrimination, coupled with the huge and strong sense of stereotyping that exists in women, and also this fact
Yeah.
that we also like traditionally carry this notion that women are inferior to men, which is actually which acts as the root cause of this violence against women. Akif, what about you? Would you agree with that perspective? Would you like to add something to that? What is it that you feel that is the root cause for this discrimination that is meted out to women?
Yes, I definitely agree with what Hitova said. Historical significance does have a lot of impact on it. And a personal point in that I would like to add would definitely be the lack of proper education about gender equality, where it all starts in the household and schools. The children are raised with the mindset that the male gender is superior and the female inferior. There should be a providence of basic education about the equality of being both of them. Like suppose in the household, the father is supposed to feed the family and provide all the needs, and not the women. So there should be basic education about the equality of both, starting school as well. The teachers, for example, um, based on my personal experiences, there was a workshop in I think fifth and sixth grade about things rights, the gender rights, and girls were segregated away from the boys, and we had different sessions. So we did not know what happened in their session. So that's probably most of the people do not know about the problems that girls have today in their own personal lives. And I think that should be one of the most important reasons. And another word would probably be an abusive household, for example, which is quite prominent in India, like exposure to violence in your own family. So I think that's all I would like to add to what you said.
I think you have pointed out the issues very accurately. Well, first thing that you said that how education is actually going to play a very major role in changing the mindset of the people. Also, the kind of environment that we portray at home, because that's what a child sort of absorbs and imbibes from day one. So, for example, the way in some households it's very common to divide duties and chores on the basis of gender roles, or for example if at home there's not a good environment and they see discrimination happening at home, then it's obviously easier for a child to internalize it. So that is somewhere that we need to attack it initially, to make sure that from the beginning itself a child should actually see a very equal sort of an environment at home. And so be it in school. In school also we have to create a lot of safe spaces, a lot of places where we can have a dialogue about where we're talking about issues related to both genders, not only about women but also about men, and actually have a very open dialogue about it, where we can all respectfully put forth our opinions. And definitely there will be people who agree, there will be people who disagree, but we can all respectfully agree to disagree and just hear each other out. So I think that's some very good, I think, observations coming from you, Akif. So, Shatakshi, let me come to you. If I had to ask you, firstly, how do if I, from a solution point of view, what do you think we should do as a society? How can we come together to put an end to this? Like, what are the feasible solutions, A, that you see at a short term level, and B, at a long term level, that we need to implement to sort of end the gender disparity that exists in our country?
So I think targeting at the grassroots level would be education, very well stated by Akif. There should be like an open platform for discussion between topics relating to men and women without any bias, I'd say. Um, then the second could be practicing it in real, because we have a lot of people who talk about a lot of issues, but saying it verbally and showing them in actions are two very different things. So that also, I think the laws should be made a little strict. Installation of CCTV cameras and proper monetization, because like proper monetization basically then could be night patrolling, because we come across a lot of incidents when the crime is committed late at night. So there can be night patrolling, not saying that they're not crimes committed during the daytime, which like is obviously there. So that I think, and also I just like take a little moment to come to the previous question, and it was very well stated by Hitova that women are considered emotionally weak. I really like that point, and I'd like to just say one thing. I was seeing an interview, Twinkle Khanna's interview, a very outspoken, very bold woman. I admire her for whatever she does. So she just stated that if men even experience a little bit of the sufferings that like females go through, be it biologically, socially, or any basically like sufferings in general, then sanitary napkins will be basically free in all public institutions. So I think females should not be considered emotionally weak or emotional fools, because they are headstrong, like very headstrong in comparison to men. I just like to say that. So yeah.
That's a point very well made, and I think a lot of the women who are joining us on this conversation today, along with the men also, would actually echo that sentiment. That if men were to go through probably what women go through, and likewise, see, every gender has their own sort of pains and has their own pain points. But definitely, I think we've always turned a blind eye towards the struggles that a woman has to go through societally as well as physically and biologically. Totally agree with that. Some very good points that you shared, even on, for example, the kind of measures that the enforcement agencies can be taking, government agencies can be taking, like, patrolling at night, making sure areas are lit so that we can avoid incidents. And I think most importantly, practice what you preach. A lot of times we get into these conversations, we say all of these things, but we let a lot of sexism go unnoticed in our lives without raising a question about it. So it's important to respectfully question everything and try to have a dialogue, because that's how the mindset is going to change after all. So now, since Shatakshi brought this point of government agencies and law enforcement agencies, I take the conversation first to Akif to know from you that, if I were to ask you at a city level or at a state level, what are the immediate things that you think we should do to be able to make our spaces more safe for women to function?
At the highest level, I think we should really encourage uh, the kind of issues that women face to government services. Like, for example, we have the police, the health, the legal and social services. All of them, when they are specifically selected for the jobs, they should be able to do that, knowing what the women go through on a daily basis. The environment should definitely be made safe, including the schools, the public spaces, and mostly work environments, among others. Most important would be, I think, the police personnel to be educated about that, and actually implementing that in their daily uses. Patrolling, like Shatakshi made a really good point about adding more CCTV cameras, and the increase of night patrolling, which also is a really major factor in violence against women. That's, I think, is a really good point shooted by her.
Right. Hito, what about you? What do you think? How do we make our cities and our states and our country largely safer for women? What are the immediate steps that we should take?
Yeah, well, like if you read about all the laws that have been implemented so far in the country, the policies, etc., then I think I find them adequate enough. And the only issue that comes in the picture is the implementation of these laws, the enforcement of these laws, which is not done properly. Like, if only the system could be more efficient, it would help a lot. And another thing that I'd like to point out is that it's not easy for women to go into the police stations and report, for example, a molestation or a case of teasing. It isn't easy for them to do that because I think I read in a research in the book called Poor Economics by Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee. They talked about how they had asked women to go into a police station and file a case, report a case of teasing or molestation or rape, and see how quick the response would be from the policeman, or if they take it seriously. And more than 50% of the time, the policeman did nothing. And that is really sad to see because these were mock tests carried out. And if you imagine the number of actual cases that happen, uh, the number of actual cases that have been reported to the police, like, and then the police doing nothing, that's really sad. And then if these places could be made safer, the police stations for the women to go and share their issues, to tell the police openly, it would immensely help the society. And another issue that I'd like to bring forth is like maybe if the government could take out time to actually pinpoint like certain areas where the reports of crime against women, uh, like where there are lots of reports against crimes against women. And so like if they could pinpoint those areas and then try and work on them separately, try and work on them particularly. For example, an area reporting a lot of cases might not have adequate lighting, or maybe an area which is reporting a lot of cases could be resolved. The issue could be resolved by simply adding in maybe more people patrolling, more police patrolling. Those tiny steps and measures that can be taken. If the government can ensure that, that would drastically change the situation.
So I think the premise that you start with is absolutely right, which is the fact that our laws exist very well on paper, but I think where we are struggling a little bit is on the implementation of the same. And this is again a very good observation that if an incident were to happen, we also need to sort of deep dive and understand that how quickly our agencies respond, how easy it is for a woman to actually go to a police station, file an FIR, and whether that is done immediately or not. Even after that, how long the investigation takes. I mean, we have fast track courts that have now been introduced for these matters, but how well they are faring. And third, and most importantly, I mean, in our cities, we know that there are certain pockets where we see that there are larger number of cases against of violence against women. So we should make sure that we kind of beef up the support that is given in those areas. There's more patrolling, there's more CCTV footage, like CCTV cameras and more installed in those areas to ensure that the agencies are able to act very quickly in case of any incident of violence against women. Now, since we have been touching upon the facts about the laws, so I'll take the conversation to Shatakshi and ask her that do you think that the laws in India are adequate to deal with issues related to safety of women? If you think the laws are adequate, do you think the enforcement part of it is adequate, or do you think that we need to relook these two aspects and the way the Indian system is functioning at this point of time?
So I think the laws are adequate, but they need to keep changing, like over a period of time, because everything keeps changing. Nothing is constant. So we need to just keep changing the laws so that they are appropriate for that generation. Coming to the exercising part of it, how well are they practiced in real? I think that needs a lot of like people need to dwell a little more light on that, because that's not happening. It's clearly not happening. we've had like so many cases in the like past, and like even if you pick the newspaper up, there's so many cases unreported. Like people don't bring that because they know nothing will happen. Like the police is not going to empathize with them. They're going to be just like they're going to neglect them basically. So I think both go hand in hand, change and the exercising part of it. So I think both need reform. Both need to be reformed.
Totally agree with you. And before we end this conversation today, as we have two men on the panel, I would want both of them to give their concluding remarks and what would they want to, what is the message that they would like to convey to members of their gender and their community, that what should an ideal take be on equality of women and how we should be looking at it. So Hitova, can we start with you, concluding remarks from you?
Yeah. What I'd like to say is that I think all of us, as a part of the society, we should respect others. We should respect women. We should try and ensure their safety. We should try and set examples for other people in the society and show them that this is how we should behave around each other. This is how we should act around each other. And then that way try and set yourselves as role models, and then more and more people will follow, more and more people will learn how to behave themselves in public, especially with women and with other people, with all people in society. In fact, learn to respect others. That's
I think that is golden, what you have just said. I mean, respect, it all boils down to respect and treating everybody as equals. Akif, parting words, concluding remarks from you.
Really think that everything has a start, and this is surely one. Conducting sessions like these, help a lot of people to understand the gravity and depth of this grave situation we are facing right now. And as you said, and I quote, if any society cannot respect women as an overall society, then it cannot be modernized and developed. We have to take a stand together against this, together as individuals, together as teams and family, and together as human, basic humans. And it's kind of really horrifying to see what this country has come to. The number of attacks only increase day by day, and violence is pervasive. And these figures too are likely to be just the tip of the iceberg. But I really think that there is a tiny bit of hope that situations will definitely increase, and hope will finally be able to take this space, and this cases will actually decline some way. Like India, it is a deeply patriarchal country, which elevates the position of men above women in society, which is totally wrong. The criminal justice system is also predominantly male. So a really important session like these help to spread out word about this situation that we are going through. And I really like to thank you and your institution as well conducting this.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. So all the viewers, the youth has spoken. You have heard it from their mouth. This is what they feel about this very important and integral issue. I would like to thank all my three panelists for being very candid, very honest about what they feel about this issue and actually share with us their perspective, no holds barred. Thank you very much. I think I absolutely agree with three of you on the observations that you shared, your responses. I resonate similar, sentiments and opinions. And I really think that, this is where it starts. I mean, dialogues have to start. We have to talk about this more in open forums, because that is only when the mindset is going to change slowly and steadily. So thank you very much again, panelists, for being such a wonderful panel. I think it was lovely and some very nice and concrete solutions were discussed. A big thank you to all our viewers for joining us and for sending us all your comments. It is your encouragement that keeps us going on a weekly basis. And we're going to be back again next week on next Saturday at 5 p.m., where we are going to be talking about how to crack the engineering exams. And we're going to hear from an alumnus of BITS Pilani how life is at BITS Pilani. Thank you very much, students. Again, a big thank you to City Montessori School, Gomti Nagar, for facilitating this. See you everybody next week. Till then, stay safe, everybody. Mask up.